Well, good afternoon. I think it must be time to appear in the corner of your screen and possibly to take down this little PowerPoint. As ever, I'm not sure if I'm actually streaming, but I do think there are some friends watching. I've just had a look. Facebook is such a maze, isn't it? It's hard to find the video, but if you made it here, well done. Again, I've turned on my poinsettia bush, and there's the sound, so we get rid of that. Take down this little. Okay, so and also I've got out my Spanish crane, which I was given in Avila, and he is just peeking cheekily through the branches of the Chinese plastic illuminated poinsettia. So I hope you're doing all right. I don't know about you, but things seem heavy at the moment. Things seem hard. So, and I think lockdown is different for everybody. And I think people experience different kinds of stress or anxiety or sorrow. But music is there, and I'm ever grateful for it, really, for the inspiration it brings and the lift it can give us all. And I've been enjoying recently some online things. So as ever, you know that the deal with this is that I only spend a couple of hours thinking about what to say. And today I found my mind has wanted to go to Spain. So I wanted to share with you some pictures and videos of Holy Week in Spain from 2018. An experience which had a very deep effect on me and which I think can inform the way you perform formal church music from that country. So I'm going to show you some bits of footage. Partly I think that wanderlust is setting in. You know, we can't go there at the moment, and so I don't know about you, but I've been sitting watching videos of people travelling, walking through cities, going on trains. Sometimes I've even resorted to Google Street View to explore a city, and I think all of those are just places for the imagination to go. The other things that have been happening this week, which have been heartening, are these, and I'm gonna really enjoy, I think, taking you into the back room, the Zoom room at the end of this session. To listen to a couple of things. With the Renaissance singers, we've been doing a mixture of different things on Monday evenings when we can't rehearse. And the latest idea, which came really from Tony Damer, who's a wonderful polymath of a man, who's the treasurer of the choir, which was to look back at historical recordings. And I was so struck by one of them, I really want to play to you Stokowski's orchestration of the possibly by Victoria motet Jesu, dulcis, memoria. So if you've got time at the end, come with me, and we'll come to the private Zoom room away from the copyright police and just have a private listen to that. And the other thing that happened was that I'm trying to go to more online academic events. And last night I attended a lecture which was given by Richard Scher, who's a very important scholar of the Vatican Library, hosted by RISM, which is an international organisation that catalogues manuscripts and sources. And although a lot of it was quite dry, it was 2 hours long, and in some ways reminded me of the sort of sore bottom nature of conferences. You know, you do sit there sometimes lost in a maze of watermarks and attributions and copyists and scribes that you've never heard of. But there were nuggets, and in particular, I think he got to the point where he pretty much named one of the copyists of the Medici Codex, which is a completely amazing thing to do. But it was also wonderful to be in a completely absorbed, geeky environment where what was being focused on was this utterly micro level of detail around musical sources. And it made me feel a little bit guilty about last week's comments where I said music used to be all about facts and books and hardbound leather copies, and it was very masculine, and we strayed into the gender thing. And then I watched this and I thought, without archivists and people who go through records, some of which are miles from musical activity itself. You know, they're looking at who got sent barrels of beer, or who was appointed to a prebendary in a French rural diocese in 1547, or which singers were paid, who was given a robe to wear at a ceremony, and then deeply into the handwriting and the paper weights and things. And actually I found myself thinking, well, without people doing that, there would be none of the sort of secondary level stuff where we can speculate around culture and around what the musical act means. So I wanted to correct it a little bit, because I sat there and there was a brilliant bit at the end which was after the meeting. So they sort of said goodbye and then they carried on chatting, and then they got on to positivism, which has become a sort of swear word in musicology, since a very important scholar called Joseph Kerman wrote his book, which in this country was published as Musicology, and he wrote that positivism was essentially a deadening, documentary, symbolic laden thing, and it prevented us thinking about music as a real human activity, and it was time to see music as a cultural act. And it was great to just see people talking about spade work and getting their corduroy patches onto their tweedy jackets and really getting in deep. And without all those editions and without all that work, we wouldn't know who was where and who wrote what and what it was for. So we need both, of course. So I do recommend you scout around if you're interested, particularly if you're an enthusiastic amateur who could never get into these university seminars. What's happening now? You don't get the flapjack and you don't get to chat with the professor with bad breath before the session. But you do now get the ability to watch these things live on screen from your own home, wearing your own slippers. So or someone else's. I'm not judging, but make your own flapjack. Don't brush your teeth for 3 days and feel as if you're a real academic. Get in there. So really, really recommend. I'm going to one this afternoon, which is hosted by Queen's College, Oxford, I think, looking at Miles Coverdale's Ghostly Psalms and Spiritual Songs, and they're going to show the sources. This is something I'd never have been able to get to. So I'm just going to have a look to see if people are watching this, what's going on on the page. As ever, I'm going just helter-skelter, so forgive me if you're writing tremendously witty things. I can't actually see them right now, but I'll take a break in a moment. All of this airports closing, the quarantine thing, has made me yearn, I think, more. It's like, don't think of elephants and all you can see is trunks and ankles with no definition. So thinking about Semana Santa and being there, and perhaps we'll have a late night session one day where I tell you about my first experience of Semana Santa, which I think was in 2009 or 2010. When when it was like a spiritual awakening, and on the third night of being on a course in Andalusia, conducting Victoria, Tenebrae responsories, I think, and some of the Requiem, I actually had an apparition in my room, which was in a former monastery building. And it was really the most astonishing week. Everywhere I went, there were processions and people making floats with flowers and extraordinary music. And I felt like I was being tapped on the shoulder. And as a conductor, I think it's very important not to just be in the notes and in the process of getting the choir to watch and sing in tune. I think it's important to listen to the street and to be out seeing music as part of the fabric of a society and a culture. Just as you would say to a sixth former, don't just do your 3 A-level subjects if you're in England. Make sure you watch the news, watch documentaries on BBC 4, explore things, very old-fashioned ideas, read a broadsheet newspaper every day. Be informed, and you'll find all these resonances cut across into your interest and into your work. Nick Cook is someone worth reading on this sort of stuff, and he particularly critiques Western music as being trapped in symbols and documents, and as I was talking about last week, and he is very keen, I think, on seeing that rather than music being a text and a product, it is a process that sits in a social context. And I think the phrase I remember him saying was that performance is a generator of social meaning, and that's where we get to, I think, with recordings like the ones I'm about to show you. So perhaps I'll just dive back into my slides and films and things and start to talk to you a bit about Semana Santa. And by the way, the other thing I want to share with you in the listening library at the end is an amazing piece by Dominique Phinot I get these enthusiasms for these Franco-Flemish composers. One week it's Verdelot, the next week it's Mouton or, Gombert. But this week, Dominique Phinot, whose Lamentations I've already recommended to you. And I want to play you an incredible piece which plunges through different tonalities, a setting of Parte Peccavi, the text about the prodigal son. So if you can come along, do. Let me just talk then. So this idea, this is just what's been on my mind, and me and Craney, we're just thinking about a Spanish context, and let's have a look. So in my PowerPoint, first of all, I put a couple of images of being there. This was March 2018, and I was on the street with these processions. Now, many of you will have been to these penitential processions, and and I'm not going to speak in any technical way, so there'll be people watching who know lots about this, and they're going to be cringing as I call these things floats, and I don't know the names of the hats and so forth, so I'm really sorry. A better prepared session, I would have looked those up. What I want to say to you really is how alienating and emotional these things are. So on the one hand, you come to this, and I'm going to say I've got a Northern European Protestant or post-Reformation mentality. Even though I'm not going to church every day or every week, I think that culturally I'm conditioned to be a bit superstitious of ritual and of public displays of emotion and particularly of a sort of spiritual outpouring which doesn't feel very controlled. So for someone with that sort of distanced, ironized version of, how do I feel about this? To be on the street with people who are openly emoting and seem completely engaged in the moment with their emotions and their beliefs, possibly, or a mixture of folk belief and just a sort of carnival. I'm certain that most of these people on the street do not regularly go to church, but I am also certain that there is a massive local pride in these different guilds which make and carry these floats with their extraordinary regalia. And if you've never experienced these things, weigh up to a ton. The images, the icons, the statues, they come from the church altars, from the chapels. They're decorated with fresh foliage. Instrumentalists accompany them, and this is of course where I really was transfixed by it. And you can see on the picture on the left the little feet sticking out of all the men who are maybe females. I tend to see men, I think, who are underneath these things, carrying them on their shoulders, and they're so heavy and laborious that they have to switch regularly. We'll come to the listening library later. Okay, I'll talk about that afterwards. So I found, as someone coming to this with a great love of the polyphony, that I felt by the end that the music of the street and the attitude towards of devotion, of popular devotion, could actually to some extent float back inside the church, because after all we see the floats coming out of the church. And in some composers of the Spanish Renaissance, particularly Guerrero is an obvious one, they do write music which has a Spanish text and music which actually has a beat, might be sort of instrumental. Shall we have a look at a daylight version? So this is the first little film I was going to show you. Here is one of the floats being brought out of a church. With a whole tree on top. Presumably the Garden of Gethsemane. Mind-boggling, really. One of the other things I found myself thinking about was the way in which, before the Reformation, it's possible that it might have been likely that you would witness such huge gatherings of people in the street in a city like Canterbury. And it made me think about the lost context of city guilds. And what that experience would be like. So to some extent, I bang on about music as a music study, perhaps as a form of ethnomusicology, as we go to another culture, to another place. And I talk about how hard it is, but how intriguing it is to imagine as an inspiration what it would have been like to be in 16th century Rome or Seville in 1580 or whatever. And to some extent, I suppose I felt as if I was there. But of course, you're also yourself looking in. You're not of the same language and culture. You are a tourist, but you are in a modern context with everyone with smartphones and people eating sunflower seeds as they do, spitting them all over the. Let's have another one. So here's back in the. We're now in the evening, and if I can find the right screen, here we go. This amazing uniforms. What gets me are these keyed buglers and this astonishing, piercing, poignant, penetrating, but also almost unbearably out of tune playing. And I have to say, this reduced me to tears at the time. And there's another bit of music I'll play you later. It's from a rational point of view, poor. From a performative street point of view of being in a theatre of the moment with people in the street, it is everything, frankly. Now, I'm sorry the sound probably suddenly clicked in, but I hope it was better then. So the imperfection of this doesn't matter because it's happening in the street and everyone knows it's hard to process and keep in time anyway. But it's that idea that a musical act, especially if it's serving something else, a ritual or a space, a social event, a cultural event, has all these rough edges which spill out into the activity of the people in the street, the woman next to me loudly chewing her sunflower seeds and spitting them on my shoes, and the uniforms are part of it, the street's part of it. So one of the things I like to think about as a conductor with formal concerts is what architecture are we in? What state of mind is the audience in, and what does this music mean to them and to us at the same time? I think all of those things should feed in to a performance, and it can't just be about the music as a text, which is to be presented in its most perfected form. Of course, we want it to be in tune and in time. And so here now in Granada, I was watching from a brilliant Airbnb that we got, this procession where they're taking the image of the Virgin Mary back into the cathedral. Let's see if... Lovely. So you can imagine me now. I'm sitting in bed last night. I'm looking at these and getting very emotional, actually, about the being there and that feeling, and the ordinariness of it is something, isn't it? So you could see in that there were people chatting. There's a mother with a baby in a pram. She's not paying attention to the procession because she's looking after her child, and all of these things are happening within the ambitus of the music, and I do think so. Some of you, I think, came to the Renaissance Singers concert on Christmas 2019, which was Spanish Renaissance, and we sang some Villancicos in the second half, and I wanted some of that feeling to come into the music. It's very hard for a slightly classically trained group of mostly English people to sort of loosen their joints and become the people they need to be. So I've got a three more of these. If you've all gone home, I understand, but I hope you're finding it interesting, and not just as a piece of tourist footage, but really as a way of imagining the soundscape and the cityscape. And the interior ritual lives of people, this is part of every year, that actually extend away like a mountain range from any musical act. And of course, it's how much of that we can bring in as a perspective, even if it's just a tiny pinch of nom, just a little spice that comes in from the street on the soles of our feet when we come into our dinner jackets and sing this music properly. And of course, I'm not saying that church music isn't a different category. Church music is neat and special and dignified, and this is for outside, but this is a form of intense religious worship as well as social activity. Now, this is quite a long little clip. It's about 2.5 minutes. The camera flips at one point, but I think this will amaze you. Some of you will have seen this sort of thing. They go round the corner and they have to be encouraged by the music, which lifts the exhausted men. You can see them through the netting inside the float as they try to negotiate round the corner. And then as they take off, the music whisks them into the street. So the music is an active agent of energy, and also, of course, of almost, you could say, propaganda to the crowd. There we go. Now, isn't that a fantastic piece of street theatre? Because the music pushed, and the emotion that you feel. I think that piece of film was taken around 3 o'clock in the morning. So you're dizzied with tiredness. You've been standing a long time for this to happen, and then this music comes, which is totally penetrating the skull, and it's objective. I found it shatteringly out of tune and so exciting. Some of the most I thought vivid and moving music I'd ever heard. I see I'm straying through my time, so I'll just whiz on. But I see Jenny was saying, yes, the imperfection is part of it. That's absolutely right. It's all the frayed edges, and the fact that it's being done now, rather like me talking to you, I think you'd forgive me if if the poinsettia caught fire and the computer fell over, because well, it's live. It's fun. Send him a quid. So. I think for me to let some of that into the building. So sometimes there was no music at all. So here's a tiny little bit of ronda, which for our Welsh viewers is not in near Bridgend or somewhere. So here's just a little bit of absolutely silent procession with a choir singing chant in the distance. These penitents are chained and barefoot, and they're walking over cobbles, and they processed for several hours with this incredible float. And I found myself really yearning, feeling a real spiritual draw towards these things. It makes you very alternately self-conscious of the self, and then to lose yourself into emotion, and then to pull yourself back. I found it quite conflicting, as a sort of Californian might say, but utterly illuminating, really, of the culture in which someone like Guerrero or Morales or Victoria would have worked, earlier in their life, and then in Victoria's case, go back to Madrid. The last little clip is from Seville, and it was interesting to me to be amongst a crowd. They have up to 1 million people in Seville for Semana Santa, and it felt at times a little bit dangerous. It was a real crush when the Macarena, which is the most venerated Virgin Mary, was approaching. People started to scream and shout. They prayed by shouting. People cried out as she came past. People threw rose petals from tall buildings. I'm not sure if this is the Macarena. I just grabbed this bit of video, but I remember the music was good. So this was 3 a.m. I think. Quite conventional music, and actually in all cases the music is either sort of 19th century or rather anonymous. What makes it are, and I see the comment, the amateur musicians who are doing it because they're part of that bit of town. They've practiced for weeks and then they come out and follow the float, and I think that's right. I'm sure professionals might make it too sort of smooth somehow, too polished, but that in itself is to impose a sort of romantic view back onto this. So you might say, well, oh, David, I see that you with your musical sophisticated views have arrived and thought, look at these people in the street with their primitive behaviour and this out of tune. It's so charming, so evocative. And actually you could say I'm finding a form of exoticism, or I don't know if you call it Occidentalism, but anyway, there's a sense of me arriving like Doctor Who, opening the TARDIS doors and saying, good Lord, this is really different, and simply gorging on the difference, the flavours of the music. And that's not the same as analysing it. It's not the same as being part of it. So, and I can see some great comments about people who've participated in processions, and of course Matthew mentioning the Macarena. Matthew, we can have a separate Zoom time where we practice the moves. Certainly it was one of the few dances I could actually do. And Matthew Simpkins, yes, the candlesticks and the brocades are simply out of this world. And if you have any high church inclination in your body, I think they're almost irresistibly beautiful. So what I want to do now is just to come back to you. You see, this is all I'd written for today, like little scribbles. So I think I'm going to invite you, into the Zoom room where we can talk about these, and then which means, of course, I'm going to open the library. So the comment, I've made a little screen for the listening library. So it's very sophisticated. We have the gramophone, we have the barista, and we have you in the Chesterfield sipping your sherry. So if you can, come with me. Let me post the invitation into the chat. I've also put it somewhere else on the page, and I'm hoping people can find it, but I do realise that this is all very complicated, and frankly, I won't be surprised if you struggle to get there. So for now, I'm going to sign off, from this Facebook part of the talk, and I'm going to sign on into Zoom, but I'll keep the video running until I've managed to get to you and paste this into the chat. So here is the Zoom link, and if you're able to see the comments, which should be swipeable on your phone, come and join me now in the Zoom room and I'll let you in. If not, the Spotify list has some of the recordings, but the Phinot, which is so very beautiful, is on Hyperion and therefore not on Spotify. But it's Stephen Rice's brilliant Brabant Ensemble, and I've been listening to it and loving it this week. Right, I think for now I'm going to stop streaming and let some of the guests in. Thank you so much for joining me today. Bye bye.